In the heart of Kano City, there was a narrow street that always smelled of roasted meat in the evenings. The smoke rose high, carrying the spicy aroma that made mouths water from afar. At the center of it all was Malam Musa's Suya spot, a small wooden stand with bright lanterns hanging on each side. The sound of sizzling meat on hot coal drew people like bees to honey, and before long, queues stretched as far as the next street. Everyone in town knew there was something different about his suya, soft, juicy, and unforgettable. Even those who had eaten suya in Lagos or Abuja said nothing compared to Musa's. Customers traveled from distant neighborhoods, sometimes waiting hours just for a piece. Young men boasted of buying his suya for their girlfriends, saying no lady could resist the taste. Mothers carried bowls to buy in bulk, while businessmen stopped in expensive cars just to grab a few sticks. The whole street came alive at night because of him. Other suya sellers grumbled quietly, wondering what secret he used to prepare his meat. Still, no one could deny that Malam Musa was the king of suya. But behind the smoke and laughter, Musa's eyes told another story. He always worked with a cold expression, hardly smiling at his customers. His assistants never stayed long, and rumors spread that he was too strict and harsh with them. Yet the meat never ran out, no matter how long the queue was. Some whispered that he must have a secret supplier who gave him the best cuts in the city. Little did they know, Musa's secret was darker than anyone could imagine. Every evening, the same sight greeted passers-by. A crowd gathered, stretching far into the main road. Men leaned against their cars, children tugged at their mothers' wrappers, and women fanned themselves as they waited for suya. The smell of pepper and roasting meat filled the air, making stomachs growl impatiently. Even the police patrol team often stopped their van to buy suya from Musa, laughing loudly as they ate on the spot. His popularity grew so much that people joked you were not truly in Kano until you tasted Musa's suya. Other suya sellers nearby watched with bitterness. Their own fires burned low, and their tables sat almost empty. Some tried to copy his style, using more pepper, adding onions and tomatoes, but it never worked. Musa's suya remained unmatched. The jealousy grew stronger each day, especially in Malam Idris, a fellow suya man whose stall was just across the street. Idris hated seeing his own customers cross over to join Musa's queue. He told himself that one day, he would uncover the mystery. Meanwhile, Musa never spoke of where he got his meat. He always arrived with large coolers in the afternoon, locking them carefully before the evening rush. No butcher in the market admitted to supplying him, which only deepened the curiosity. People laughed it off, saying perhaps he had connections to the biggest abattoir in the city. But the truth was far from it. When the lamps went out and the crowd dispersed, Musa's nights were filled with shadows, blood, and secrets that would soon come to light. Customers described Musa's suya as magical. The meat melted in the mouth, seasoned with a unique blend of pepper that burned just enough to make you crave more. Some people claimed they dreamt of it at night and woke up rushing to his stall. It became a status symbol to be seen with a pack of Musa's suya. Young men posted pictures of it on social media, bragging that they had the real deal. The craze spread across the city, and Musa's fame reached even to neighboring towns. Yet strange things began happening around the community. Families reported missing persons, young men who went out at night and never returned, children who disappeared without a trace, and even women who were last seen walking home late. Police chalked it up to the rising crime in the city, blaming kidnappers and ritualists. Nobody connected it to the man behind the glowing suya stand. After all, how could the beloved suya seller be involved in such horror? The thought seemed impossible. But Idris, the jealous suya man, couldn't let go of his suspicions. He noticed that Musa's meat was never tough, never stringy, unlike the goat or ram they usually bought from the market. It looked different, softer, and strangely fresh. Where does he get it from? Idris muttered to himself night after night. He vowed to find out, even if it meant following Musa in the dark. And so, the seed of investigation was planted, one that would eventually bring Musa's empire crashing down. When the last customer left and the lanterns dimmed, Malam Musa always stayed behind. The smoke cleared, and silence replaced the noisy laughter of his buyers. He would pack his knives neatly, wash the blood-stained table, and cover the remaining meat. But instead of going home, Musa often disappeared into the narrow alleys behind the suya joint. Nobody ever followed him that late, because the streets were dark and unsafe. Yet Musa walked with confidence, as though the night itself obeyed him. People who lived near the alleys sometimes complained of hearing strange sounds, like muffled screams or heavy dragging noises. When they asked Musa about it, he simply laughed and said, "It's cats and dogs fighting for scraps." They believed him, because who would suspect the hard-working Suya man loved by the whole city? But if anyone had been brave enough to follow him, they would have seen the terrible truth of where his meat came from. Musa had a small secret room, hidden behind an abandoned warehouse. It was there he prepared his special supply. On the wooden floor lay blooded clothes, broken bangles, and shoes that didn't belong to him. He worked carefully, cutting flesh with precision, separating bones from meat the way a skilled butcher would. By dawn, he packed the fresh meat into coolers, ready to sell as Suya. He had no shame, no fear, only hunger for more profit. Malam Idris grew restless. Night after night, he watched as Musa's queue overflowed while his own firewood burned almost to ashes without sales. The jealousy gnawed at him, but more than jealousy, there was a burning question. What was Musa's secret? Idris tried spying from across the street, but Musa always worked with his back turned, his movements quick and guarded. Idris noticed, however, that Musa's coolers were never empty no matter how much he sold. One evening, Idris called one of Musa's former assistants, a young boy named Bala who had quit suddenly. Bala spoke in a trembling voice. "Malam Musa is not ordinary. He does things at night. I cannot explain, but I swear, I saw things that scared me." Idris pressed him for details, but Bala refused to say more, only warning him, "Don't go near him at night." Instead of scaring Idris away, the words made him more determined. He was convinced Musa's meat was not from any market. That night, Idris decided he would follow Musa. He pretended to close early, dousing his fire and folding his stand. But instead of going home, he hid in the shadows, watching Musa clean up. His heart pounded as Musa carried a cooler and disappeared into the back alleys. Quietly, Idris followed, every step heavy with fear and curiosity. What he saw that night would haunt him forever. Idris crept through the dark alley, keeping his distance as Musa entered the abandoned warehouse. The faint light of a lantern flickered inside, casting long shadows on the cracked walls. Idris peeped through a broken window, his heart racing. At first, he thought Musa was cutting goat meat. But then his eyes widened in horror. The shape on the floor was not an animal, it was a human body. Musa's sharp knife glistened as he sliced the flesh with skill, humming a low tune. Idris's hands shook violently as he clamped his mouth shut to stop a scream. He could not believe what he was seeing. The rumors of missing people flashed through his mind, and suddenly everything made sense. This was why Musa's Suya tasted different, why the meat was always soft, why customers kept coming back. The secret was human flesh. Idris stumbled back, terrified, almost tripping over stones as he fled the alley. He couldn't sleep that night. His mind replayed the scene over and over, each detail burning into his memory. He knew he had discovered something that could destroy Musa forever, but fear held him back. What if Musa found out he had been spied on? What if nobody believed him? For now, Idris decided to keep quiet. But inside him, the fire of revenge had already started burning. The next morning, Idris sat at his stall with trembling hands. He roasted a few sticks of meat, but he couldn't eat or sell with peace of mind. Every time the smoke rose, he remembered Musa's knife cutting through human flesh. He looked at customers laughing as they rushed to Musa's stall, and he shivered. They were smiling, chewing, licking peppered meat, never knowing what they were putting in their mouths. The secret weighed heavily on Idris's chest, choking him with guilt. In the market, whispers about missing people grew louder. A young student who lived nearby had vanished, and posters of the boy's face were pasted on street poles. Women cried openly, begging the police to act, but no one had answers. Musa, however, sold more Suya that night than ever before. His business thrived on the ignorance of the people, and each missing person only added to his endless supply. To Musa, it was just business, nothing more. Idris struggled with the truth. Should he speak out and risk being laughed at or even killed by Musa? Or should he remain silent and let people continue eating death without knowing? His conscience tormented him daily, but fear tied his mouth. The city was drowning in Suya smoke, and only Idris knew the stench of blood hidden beneath it. As weeks passed, Musa's fame spread beyond Kano. Travelers arriving at the motor park asked for directions to his Suya spot before even reaching their hotels. Newspapers wrote small articles about the Suya king, whose meat was taking over the city. Musa began earning more than he ever imagined, building a new house on the outskirts of town. Expensive clothes, gold rings, and a shiny new car soon followed. People admired his success, believing he was simply hard-working. But with wealth came arrogance. Musa no longer respected other Suya sellers, mocking their poor sales and laughing at their struggles. "Maybe you people don't know how to roast meat," he would say coldly, while slicing his meat with precision. His competitors hated him more with each passing day, but none had the courage to confront him. Except Idris, who silently waited for the right time to strike. The jealousy in Idris's heart had now mixed with rage and justice. Still, Musa worked like a machine, night after night, cutting, preparing, and selling without rest. He never seemed tired, never seemed burdened by guilt. But when he was alone, sometimes he muttered to himself, whispering words in Hausa no one understood. His eyes grew darker, as though the evil inside him had eaten away whatever humanity remained. One night, Musa returned from the alley with his cooler, but something was different. The meat looked fresher than usual, almost too fresh. A young woman buying Suya noticed a gold bracelet in the cooler, half covered in blood. "Malam, what is this?" she asked jokingly, thinking it was decoration. Musa froze for a moment before laughing. He quickly removed it and said, "Ah, it is from my wife. It fell by mistake." The woman laughed too, not suspecting a thing. But Idris, who was watching closely, caught every detail. He saw the flash of panic in Musa's eyes before the lie came out. He knew that if Musa was not careful, one day he would expose himself without anyone's help. Idris began plotting ways to push Musa into making more mistakes. He told himself, "I will bring him down. The whole city will know the truth." That night, Musa scolded himself. How could he be so careless? He made sure to burn all clothes, shoes, and jewelry from his victims, leaving no evidence. But the greed for more customers was pushing him to take risks. And risks, sooner or later, lead to downfall. The police began investigating the rise in missing persons. They visited markets, abattoirs, and motor parks, searching for clues. People mentioned kidnappers and ritualists, but no one dared link Musa to the crimes. After all, Musa sold Suya to the policemen themselves. They trusted him, joking that he was feeding the force with the best meat in town. Musa's confidence grew stronger with their ignorance. Idris, however, couldn't hold it anymore. He approached one police officer secretly and whispered about Musa's activities at night. But the officer laughed in his face. "How can you say such nonsense? Do you want to destroy his business because you are jealous?" The officer warned him to keep quiet or risk being arrested for false accusation. Idris left frustrated, realizing that nobody would believe him without proof. Musa continued killing quietly, his knives sharper than ever. But in his pride, he began choosing victims closer to the community. Each disappearance shook the people, but they didn't know the killer stood before them every evening, smiling coldly behind the Suya fire. During the Salah festival, demand for Suya tripled. Musa prepared bigger coolers, working day and night without rest. People queued from morning till night, eager to carry Suya to their families. The city buzzed with excitement, and Musa became a household name. Everyone praised him, saying, "May Allah bless his hands, his meat is the sweetest gift of Salah." But Idris noticed something chilling. He realized more people went missing just before the festival. Families cried, searching for their loved ones, but nobody connected it to the Suya stand. Idris clenched his fists in anger, watching Musa laugh as he roasted human flesh openly, admired by the ignorant crowd. His stomach turned each time he saw children chewing the deadly meat. That night, Idris swore to himself that the festival would be the last time Musa fooled the city. He would risk everything to uncover the truth. Even if the police ignored him, he would find proof strong enough to shake the entire community. Idris devised a plan. He would follow Musa again, but this time, he would not go alone. He convinced a young apprentice from another Suya seller to come with him, promising him money and protection. The boy, though afraid, agreed. Together, they hid in the shadows, waiting for Musa to carry his cooler into the alley. Musa, as usual, whistled softly as he dragged his load into the warehouse. The two spies followed silently, their hearts pounding. From the broken window, they watched again. Musa had another victim, a young man tied up and gagged. The poor soul cried, but Musa silenced him with a single stroke of his knife. Blood splashed on the floor as Musa began his grim butchery. The boy gasped, almost screaming, but Idris covered his mouth. "Now you see what I mean," Idris whispered. He knew they had finally found proof. The question was, how could they use it without ending up dead themselves? The apprentice was terrified. He begged Idris never to involve him again. "If Musa knows I saw this, he will kill me," the boy cried. Idris understood but warned him to stay silent. Meanwhile, Idris's hatred for Musa grew stronger by the day. Each night, he dreamt of blood, knives, and screaming victims. He felt guilty for keeping quiet while the whole city ate human flesh. But he also knew Musa was dangerous. If he made one wrong move, Musa would kill him without mercy. Idris decided to wait, watching carefully for the perfect chance. Musa, on the other hand, sensed nothing. He continued living his double life, enjoying his fame while hiding his sins. But his arrogance blinded him, and he didn't notice that his enemy was closer than he thought. In the market, some sellers began whispering that Musa's success was too strange. They noticed how Idris always looked at him with burning eyes. They suspected jealousy, but none imagined that Idris held the truth that could shake the city to its core. Musa began to boast openly. "Nobody in this city can compete with me. My Suya is the best, and no one can take my customers." He raised his voice so that Idris could hear, smirking as he handed sticks of Suya to eager buyers. Idris clenched his fists, nearly speaking out, but he held his tongue. Musa's pride was his weakness, and Idris planned to use it against him. That evening, Musa roasted meat with unusual joy. He sang loudly in Hausa, attracting more people than usual. Even strangers passing by stopped to taste his Suya. The queue stretched endlessly, and Musa laughed at the sight. But in his arrogance, he forgot to hide a crucial detail. A blood-stained shirt lay near his cooler. Idris saw it and smiled to himself. The downfall was near. He decided it was time. He would expose Musa not with words, but with action. If the police refused to believe him, the city itself would see the truth. Idris began plotting a trap that Musa would not escape. Idris gathered courage. He secretly approached two journalists who often reported strange news around the city. He told them he had a story that would shock Kano, but they needed to follow him at night. At first, they laughed, but his seriousness convinced them. He promised they would get proof that would make headlines across Nigeria. The journalists agreed, carrying their cameras hidden under their clothes. That night, Idris led them through the dark alleys. They hid outside the warehouse, waiting. Soon, Musa arrived with another victim, dragging him inside. The journalists filmed every move from the window, Musa's knife, the victim's cries, the blood on the floor. The footage was too clear to deny. For the first time, Idris felt a heavy weight lift from his chest. But the danger was far from over. One of the journalists accidentally stepped on a stick, making a cracking sound. Musa paused, sensing movement. He dropped his knife and walked towards the window. Idris held his breath, praying Musa would not discover them. Musa peered into the darkness, his eyes scanning the shadows. "Who is there?" he shouted. The night grew silent, broken only by the hiss of hot coals. For a moment, Idris thought it was the end. But a stray dog barked nearby, distracting Musa. He grumbled, cursed the animal, and went back to his bloody work. Idris and the journalists exhaled with relief, their bodies trembling from fear. Once Musa left the warehouse, Idris rushed the journalists away. They reviewed the footage under a dim streetlight, and their jaws dropped. "This is madness," "The whole city is eating human flesh," one whispered. Idris nodded grimly. "Now you believe me." The journalists promised to release the evidence soon, but Idris warned them, "Be careful. If Musa suspects, he will kill us all." The night ended in silence, but the storm was about to begin. The footage was more than enough to destroy Musa, yet exposing him meant exposing the horror the people had been enjoying for years. Idris knew the city would never be the same again. 2 days later, the journalists published the story. The headline screamed, "Popular Kano Suya seller exposed, human flesh served as meat." Videos circulated across phones, radios buzzed with the news, and televisions replayed the footage endlessly. People gasped in disbelief, some screaming, others vomiting at the thought of what they had eaten. The once joyful Suya spot turned into a place of fear and disgust. Crowds gathered outside Musa's stall, shouting and cursing. Mothers wept, remembering how their children had begged for his Suya. Men tore their clothes in anger, realizing they had been eating death. Some fainted, unable to accept the truth. The police, humiliated for ignoring earlier warnings, rushed to arrest Musa. But Musa had already fled, his stall abandoned, the lanterns cold. Idris watched from a distance, his heart pounding. He had succeeded, but he also knew Musa would not give up easily. A man who had lived so long in blood would not disappear quietly. The city was boiling, and the hunt for Musa had just begun. Police roadblocks appeared everywhere, searching for Musa. His face was on every poster, his name on every radio station. But Musa was clever. He disguised himself, moving from one small village to another, always staying a step ahead. Rumors spread that he had used charms to escape, that bullets could not kill him. Fear and superstition only added to his legend. Meanwhile, Idris lived in hiding. Some people hailed him as a hero, others blamed him for not speaking earlier. He received threats from Musa's hidden supporters, who still craved the taste of his Suya. Idris knew Musa was out there, waiting for revenge. At night, he sometimes dreamed of Musa standing over him with a knife. The city remained tense. Every strange disappearance was blamed on Musa, even when there was no proof. It seemed as if his shadow lingered everywhere, haunting the streets and the people he had once fed. Musa's luck finally ran out. One evening, while trying to board a bus to Kaduna, he was recognized by a passenger who had seen his face on the news. Panic erupted as people shouted, "That is him! The Suya killer!" Musa tried to run, but the crowd pounced on him, beating him mercilessly. By the time police arrived, Musa's face was swollen, his clothes torn, and his arrogance shattered. The officers dragged him to the station, where angry citizens gathered, demanding justice. Musa, bleeding and broken, still refused to speak. He only muttered in Hausa, "You all enjoyed it. You begged for it. I only gave you what you craved." His words sent chills down everyone's spine. The people realized with horror that they had been complicit, blinded by greed for taste. Musa was locked in a dark cell, awaiting trial. But the city would never forget the man who turned human flesh into a delicacy. His name became a curse, a reminder of evil hidden in plain sight. The trial was swift. Evidence from the journalists, testimonies from Idris, and the missing persons records sealed Musa's fate. The judge declared him guilty of murder, cannibalism, and crimes against humanity. The courtroom erupted in cheers and curses as Musa was sentenced to death. For the first time, the Suya king was powerless, his knives taken away, his empire reduced to ashes. Idris sat in the back, tears in his eyes. He had won, but the victory was bitter. The memories of what he saw, the screams of Musa's victims, and the faces of customers eating human flesh would never leave his mind. The city tried to heal, but the scars remained deep. Other Suya sellers reopened their stalls, but people could never look at Suya the same way again. And so ended the reign of Malam Musa, the man who sold death as Suya. His story became a warning told across Nigeria, that evil can hide behind the sweetest taste, and that sometimes, the most beloved man in the market can be the devil himself.